Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who's joining us. We let people trickle in. I'm very excited today. This is our November edition of our TileDB Tech Talk series. We started about a year ago, and we announced our partnership with Databricks earlier this quarter. And I'm so excited today to have we're going to talk more deeply technically about this, and for especially for healthcare and life sciences. I am so excited to welcome Mark Lee. He is the industry go-to-market leader for healthcare and life sciences at Databricks. And we have our very own Seth Shellnut, Chief Technology Officer at TileDB. So good to have you here. And there's a lot of interest that we've seen since we announced our partnership and around technical integration, possibilities, use cases. What can you expect? And there is a QR code here. You can, if you want to scan to learn more. And of course, like we're going to learn more during the course of this webinar. Our agenda today is going to be as follows. So we're going to essentially set the stage for, why multimodal data is super important for precision health. I think if people who are joining this will not come as news to anybody here. And Seth will go through how we tackle this complex data with TileDB, and followed by Mark, who will take us through Databricks Omics intelligence platform and how it's done on the Databricks side. And then we have two very exciting, I'd say, live demos, always scary, but always fun. So Mark is going to take us through a TCGA analysis by Databricks and TileDB, and Seth is going to walk us through a trio plus NVIDIA with single-cell rapid submanifolds. We're going to close it out with Q&A. Just a housekeeping note, please. If you have questions, drop it in the Q&A panel, and we will address them towards the end. Right? So I want to kick us off with just a few opening poll questions. If you could take a little bit of time to select on your screen. To level set, do you use multimodal data today in your workflows, in your drug discovery, precision medicine workflow from beginning to end? And where are you in your journey to use a lakehouse? There has been a whole evolution from databases to warehouses to lakes and lakehouses, and where we are with multimodal data platforms today. So where are you in that journey? And of course, how are you interacting with agents today? I imagine, like Mark said, like I don't think there's a lot in production today. Like I would be surprised if there's a lot of production today, but I'm sure a lot of people are experimenting. So we'd love to know that. So I'm seeing like 26 responses so far. Hopefully we can have more, and we can push it out. Let's get a few more. Yeah. Let's push the results out. Okay. So we're seeing kind of across the spectrum. Multimodal data, yes. And again, same for active usage of lakehouse architectures. Yeah, a couple of you guys are all actually using automation agents in production workflows. That's interesting. I think it'll be interesting after. All right, thank you for indulging. So now let's get started and dive in. Mark, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, folks. My name is Mark Lee. I lead our industry ecosystems for healthcare and life sciences. And one of the major initiatives from Databricks is that we've been determining how we can actually really help and improve patient outcomes for a lot of patients today. And this is what we're doing on an industry-wide basis. And it's because we see a huge opportunity to improve individual care as well as population health, utilizing a holistic view of the patient journey. This is basically the idea is how do you get a longitudinal view of the patient journey. Traditionally speaking, we'd be looking at mostly diagnostic information as well as prognosis information from medical charts as well as labs data. But increasingly, what we're seeing is the usage of more genomics information, including biomarkers. And in order to really get that vision, we're going to see a lot of incorporation of different technologies and different data sets, including telemetry information from IoT devices, your admission, discharge, transfer feeds from your fire systems, your claims, your labs data, your clinical charts. Very importantly, we're going to go more into genomics today, as well as even social behavior for determinants of health, surveys, and patient calls and web clicks. So our idea is with our lakehouse environment, we can actually ingest all of these different sources of information and then very importantly synthesize a patient journey coming out of it that includes more information than just, well, what particular medical diagnosis does this patient have, but also looks into different determinants of health, looking at different aspects associated with patients, gender, as well as age, demographic range, and weight and BMI information, biological data. And that's because we think that we can actually utilize this data to, with the patient longitudinal journey, to get a better view of precision health. And it's going to deliver a wide range of applications across the entire healthcare and life sciences space today. So utilizing that data, we can look at pharmacogenomics. So we can look at how we can see the interplay between different biomarker data. So biomarker identification with different disease states and phenotypes. We can actually really importantly start working on early diagnostics and newborn screening. So we can utilize genomic information to understand what is the likelihood of a particular newborn or a particular patient early in their age of just demonstrating a particular phenotype or disease. And we can also look at how we can prevent inherited diseases using this kind of genomic screening. Now, we can look at disease predictions as well, utilizing more advanced tertiary analysis, and we can interface with a lot of public health programs and obtain information specifically on how the population health is working today, as well as, very importantly, how we can control infectious disease outbreaks. This all goes back to precision health. And from a Databricks perspective, this all goes back to how we can really harmonize the information that's coming in from these various different sources into a single patient longitudinal view, which we usually call something along the lines of patient 360.
Right. I think Seth, over to you.
So what we've seen at TileDB, right, is that there's a huge drive around the multimodal aspects. Everything Mark has just talked about really is driven by the ability to bring all these different modalities together. As you see on this nice infographic that we have, bringing the omics, right, the metabolomics, the biome, the EHR data, imaging, to really drive these precision medicines, these clinical trials, the hospital use cases we see. You've got to have all of these modalities. It fosters the competitive advantage, and it helps you make all of these decisions going from bench to bedside. Of course, there's some difficulty in managing this multimodal data, right? It's very complex to use. You see the web kind of connecting these modalities to opportunities, and that's a web that a lot of people struggle with in the complexity of the data set. It also typically ends up being very expensive to manage this data at scale and too slow to deal with it with traditional, brute force methods of crawling the data. And lastly, everyone wants to take advantage of this data with AI, but you really need a new solution, which we'll talk about today, to really handle this. So with TileDB, what we really looked also is not just the needs of today, right? Multimodal is a huge aspect of what people are trying to do and to bring things into the AI age. But if anything, the AI revolution has taught us is that you need to look beyond the data of today, right? The data of today will be different tomorrow. So you need a system that is going to evolve, but the foundations will remain, right? You've got to have extensibility and it integrated into different and diverse systems. You've got to be able to combine data from multiple sources and systems, and you've got to leverage the best-in-class compute models and AI tools. And those best-in-class tools, just like the data, they will change. The tools of tomorrow will be different from the tools of today. But you need a system that can interoperate and handle where we're going in the future that we're going to have together in this space. So when we talk about the differences here, really, I really like the diagram we have around where we've seen the world evolve. A lot of people are familiar with structured data. People tend to think of that as traditional SQL tables. But as we're moving, those, in the world over the last 30 years, right, we've had semi-structured, we have had unstructured. These terms mean different things to different people, but the root to take away here is that it's an evolving data structure, right? More data sets have come in than traditional tabular data sets that we started with 30, 40 years ago in computer science. And you've now have really diverse data sets. And just as the data is evolving, that connection across the data sets are evolving, right? You have omnimodal to multimodal. I'm sorry, you have unimodal to multimodal to omnimodal, right? We started off with kind of singular data sets, maybe some flat tables, DIMs, and fact tables. And we really have this diverse multimodal world where we're kind of in today, trying to bring different data sets, imaging, videos, text, tables, the genomic and scientific data into one, and really moving towards that omnimodal world where you're going to have a diverse set of data across everything. So what we're going to be talking a lot about today in this tech talk, right, is that to do effective AI, you need to learn from your evolving data. Part of what we're going to show in the demos later is how you can leverage systems to grow with your data sets as you're growing, right? Everyone wants to use AI agents today. Everyone loves to hear LLMs. But those agents and LLMs, they need to query infrastructure to find the data. You can't just throw an agent out there. You have to actually connect it to your data sources. But unfortunately, there's a lot of infrastructure problems that exist today, right? There's data silos, there's silos across databases, flat files are scattered all over. You have chaos in many different systems. And you have your unstructured data, typically, which is just a catch-all term for things that people don't know how to deal with, right? Your unstructured data lives in a variety of places and is not connected. This typically leads to a lot of bespoke solutions. You're going to have an agent for one system, an agent for another. You're going to try to daisy chain things together. This is unmaintainable. It becomes very expensive to manage this from the engineering side, from the product side. You're not going to derive the business value that you need. So you end up with a huge disconnect between the IT infrastructure, who are trying to manage and centralize all of your IT resources, and then the business units and data experts that are trying to make sense of this more frontier data, of this different data, which typically leads to the shadow IT function, which ends up causing a lot of this fragmentation, right, of having separate infrastructure deployed out in different teams, different organizational units. And this is a huge challenge that we see in a lot of organizations today. So this is where we like to introduce TileDB, right, as an omnimodal intelligence platform. We can structure and govern and analyze all the data in a unified platform, right? This unified platform brings together end-to-end data management in a fair fashion, so you can continue to achieve the fair goals that everybody has. We add bioinformatic pipelines and analysis on complex modalities, which we'll talk and show a little bit today on multiomics, imaging, clinical data, and the foundations to manage everything for your LLMs and your agents that you need in the system here. So a couple use cases that we'd like to mention that we've seen great success with TileDB is with Quest Diagnostics. TileDB is being used for genomics and imaging and bringing a multimodal aspect to the clinical diagnoses that they're doing in the diagnostic testing that Quest has, really driving forward more precision medicine and almost a digital twin for patient details at Quest. And they've taken a great advantage of TileDB to scale to unprecedented levels, right? Using a very large genomic data with the millions of patients that they see per year, being able to store that diverse data set and build those digital twins. In a similar but very different use case at Rady, they have a fantastic program for newborn screening called the Begins project, the Begins Consortium. TileDB, along with Rady, Alexion, Illumina, and several others are part of this consortium to really drive newborn sequencing and revolutionize how we do rare disease diagnoses for infants and improving the clinical outcomes in the NICU. So TileDB is facilitating this by storing the genomic data, providing a platform for machine learning, and facilitating this rapid diagnostic capabilities, and then back propagating the information for refined training capabilities. So we see a very diverse set of use cases here that really show how bringing multiple modalities together and bringing this omnimodal platform, especially tying it in with machine learning, can really drive a lot of value for people in life science. So what we'd like to now talk a little bit is why we have TileDB and Databricks together. So we have designed a multi-omics lakehouse together with Databricks where we can unify the two systems together to work together in a very nice way. So what you'll see in this diagram, right, is that we've got data that's going to feed in to both systems. You're going to ingest data. You have a diverse set of data. You have multi-omics data sets. You have tabular data sets. You have patient records, EHR data. They're going to live in a variety of places. Quite often, you're going to have delta tables alongside TileDB, variant data sets, TileDB single-cell data sets. You're going to have EHR data sets, that might be an iceberg. again, alongside those TileDB data sets. And you're able to feed that directly into Databricks and TileDB. We have synchronization between the catalogs, between Unity Catalog and TileDB's multimodal catalog, which we'll talk about today. And we have computation integrations, right? So that from each other's systems, we can access the distributed compute environments. We can run on Photon. We can run machine learning jobs. You can use task graphs from TileDB. We can build out LLMs and agents on top. And you can fuse the data sets together no matter where the compute is run. And we'll show several examples of how we can leverage that combined compute today. But this really builds out the entire workflow end to end from data ingestion to, again, back propagating all of that data. You see the last step here, step 7, right, is synchronization and feedback. Because as we know from the ML and AI use cases today, a very important aspect is being able to bring the data back and your findings back to further refine and train those models to then better improve the data and then health outcomes ultimately here. So we're very happy with this this architecture that we've come together and look forward to showing to you in just a little bit here. All right, so with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mark.
All right, hey folks, that's a really great introduction, Seth, and I think that's really the core of how we're partnering with TileDB today. At Databricks, we understand that there are many other platforms out there, and there are many existing different data sources that a lot of our customers are utilizing in order to really realize their omics goals. A way to really think about it is Databricks has been a company that's only been alive since 2013, but I can tell you that omics development has been there for, I would say, at least 40 to 50 years in earnest. And if you want to think about the more recent innovations that have been made, I would say there's been a rapid increase in the different technologies that have been utilized to really realize how to get insights out of omics. And this is where Databricks starts incorporating some of these technologies with what we call the Omics Intelligent Platform, which allows you to deliver insights from different omics data, so genomics and proteomics information, by utilizing data intelligence within a Databricks Lakehouse environment. So a quick background of Databricks itself. We have over 14,000 global customers today. We are more than $4 billion in revenue, and we have more than $15 billion in investment. We are known as the data and AI company. That is because we are the inventor of the Lakehouse technology. So the ability to run a lot of workloads for both data science, data serving for business intelligence, as well as machine learning, all at scale, utilizing a single source of truth and technology. And we're also a massive pioneer of generative AI technologies, releasing our own models as well as building a very powerful model deployment platform that is utilized across multiple different clouds and hyperscalers, as well as by providing a marketplace where you can actually use different models that are available out of the box as well. We are a recognized leader within database management systems, data science, and machine learning platforms as well. For a lot of folks, they'll know us as the creator of a variety of different technologies. Apache Spark was the first technology we really built out. This is all the way back in 2013 in order to figure out how we can do better ETL processing. Along the way, we knew we had to get insights from data, so we began to build out a new framework specifically for monitoring the model development called MLflow. That is the leading open source project specifically for model management today. And we also built out the Lakehouse concept by creating what is known as Delta Lake. Now, as part of our acquisition of another company that was actually the founder of Iceberg, we are also the creators of Iceberg by inheritance as well. So we've now unified the Delta Lake and the Iceberg format from tabular into a single Lakehouse environment. Now, we also built out a concept known as Unity Catalog. When we began to look at what the industry really needed, we found that we can now process data at scale, and we can also process machine learning at scale by utilizing model metrics. And now we have to figure out, well, how can we govern at scale? So Databricks also created a Unity catalog in order to examine data sets across both structured and unstructured information, so we can actually get provenance, lineage, and very importantly, control access to those particular data sets, both within a company utilizing Databricks and also for companies external to the Databricks environment as well. And last but not least, we are also known for working within our generative AI space. We have created several models, including the DBRX model, which is one of our LLM technologies, as well as the RLVR model, which was for some time the leading text-to-SQL model available within the market. And the thing about it is, as we're building out this technology, we're keeping a very strong eye on the healthcare and life sciences industry itself. And that's because we know this particular ecosystem is going to be and is already data-driven. So we've worked with many different companies across this entire vertical, We support 14 of the 15 largest global pharma, 9 of the 10 largest US health insurers, and 17 of the 25 largest integrated delivery networks within the United States. We are a global company, and our presence is global within this particular space as we're building out the industry. For example, we work with multiple providers in care deliveries. We do work with payers and benefits. We work with a lot of pharmacy distribution centers as well as different governments across the entire world. In fact, we also work with a lot of analytics and diagnostic services and also biopharma, as well as medtech. And that's because what we were building out with a lot of these particular clients is what we call the data intelligence platform. This concept has been built over, I would say, the course of 12 years, the technology we've built out incrementally by examining what our customers needed the most and what the market was really demanding. And what we found is that the very central tenet of a data intelligence platform, how to get insights from your data, is first you have to unify your data into a single source of truth. So that's when we created that lakehouse concept where we can store all that information using either Delta or Iceberg or a variety of different formats and then surface that utilizing a Unity catalog governance layer. So those who are supposed to receive access data can receive access to data at scale, and we can also have that data be surfaced over to multiple different personas, including folks working within the artificial intelligence world, building agentic workflows, and then machine learning technologies, including classical systems like SVM, decision trees, down to convolutional neural nets and GANs, all the way to our LLM approaches. We've also had that data, same exact data set be surfaced over to data warehousing workloads of Databricks SQL. So the ability to surface this within both an OLAP system and now with our new lake-based technology, the ability to surface this with very, very low latency. And because we are very, very heavy within Spark-based pipelines and ETL ingestions, we've created what is known Lakeflow, which allows us to basically ingest different types of data sets, both structured and unstructured, and we can ingest that in both batch and streaming mode. This is a very powerful part of our platform that is utilizing what we call declarative pipelines that allow a lot of engineers to focus less on the orchestration of a particular pipeline and more on the code and logic associated with it. And then last but not least, as part of our BI serving layer, we also have our AI BI for business intelligence, which allows us to basically surface insights from different data, multimodal data, utilizing agentic approaches behind the scenes. This data intelligence platform is part of a very strong change for our particular company. And the important part about it is that as we are making this particular change, we're also focusing. Okay, we're also focusing specifically on how we can actually address wider industry needs as well. So as you saw, we have stretched very far throughout the entire ecosystem for HLS in this particular segment, but at the same time, we've also developed a very powerful intelligence platform. And now the company wants to figure out, well, how can we actually work with our customers to figure out how we can deliver a lot more ROI for different needs? So we've begun to create these concepts and those data intelligence outcome maps, which allows us to look across multiple different segments that a lot of our customers are working in today and figure out where can we actually provide the most benefits. For example, within R&D and productivity for a lot of pharma and medtech devices today, how can we accelerate drug discovery? How can we streamline clinical development in order by modernizing clinical data repositories, or how we can build a fair data platform so anybody can access information securely and at scale within a company. We've also looked at supply chain and manufacturing for optimizations and even improving commercial effectiveness to find out how we can actually improve revenue for a lot of these particular companies as well. For the purposes of our particular partnership with TileDB, we are working very specifically with accelerating drug discovery, but we can see how this particular platform, our partnership will advance over time. Now, this is where Databricks can really help you in the drug discovery lifecycle. So if you really think about how drug discovery works today, there's going to be a target discovery and validation where you're going to figure out traditionally using chemical methods and biological methods, what is a particular drug target we're looking for. Today, this is mostly done in silico now, where folks are utilizing tox screens as well as different affinity assays utilizing in silico methodology in order to figure out whether or not a drug is likely to have an effect. And we're also seeing a lot of work within the genomic space. We're seeing work within QSARs for drug molecule discovery. And we're seeing the development of very strong AI platforms that allow you to analyze many, many different types of biological data from different sources in order to find suitable drug targets. We also see movements within the drug discovery and screening for lead optimization. So that's more of the QSAR work. So how do folks leverage agent solutions in drug design? How do you predict the 3D structures of targets utilizing technology like AlphaFold? And very importantly, how do you use AI to determine drug activity through homology modeling? From there, we then go into preclinical development. We look at things like site selection. So how do we actually determine whether or not a particular patient cohort is going to be advantageous for particular clinical trials? How do we ensure that clinical trials do not fail due to bad biological activity, but actually due to operational nuances? So we work pretty heavily in that space, and we do work within the post-clinical space about how do we actually delta share data over to different CROs. In fact, as part of this particular build out we've had a lot of customers today, we were focusing specifically on how do we actually improve the ability to share data from one particular organization to another organization, and really how do we unlock a lot of insights from that data sets. So this is where we start talking about where we see a lot of our customers operating today within the market. This is known as a data and AI maturity curve. If you have been attending this particular webinar for the first time or have seen Databricks for the first time, then this will be new to you. But the entire idea here is that we have been surveying a lot of our customers today and determining how they've been processing information and what their actual goals are when it comes to processing it. So as powerful as multimodal data is in omics, in the end, we're actually looking for better patient outcomes. So if you think about it, there is a journey in which you can adopt more technology in order to reach that better patient outcome, which eventually will be personalized medicine. For a lot of clients today, they already have the ability to retrieve patient record genomics, and they are working on getting more real-time IoT information from many devices today in order to get that patient vitals retrieval. And they're also moving towards determinants of health modeling. Now, the thing is, for a lot of them, because they've been building out these particular platforms on legacy warehousing technology, they often have a large gap and struggle to move over from this kind of diagnostic data exploration technology over to more predictive modeling, prescriptive analytics. So that's when we work with customers to figure out, well, now that we actually have this information sort of in a lakehouse system, how do we actually reach patient health recommendations? And eventually, how do we actually produce precision medicine so we have a personalized medicine recommendation specifically for patients? Oh. And that's where we've actually been working very specifically with a lot of our customers today. What we have here is what we call a level 100 architecture. So we've determined a lot of times which different data sources our customers are utilizing today, how do they ingest that data into their particular platform, and how do they deliver the data products that matter to most of them. For example, how do we see gene expression reports, disease risk, or gene ontology? And very importantly, how do you develop recommendations on precision medicine, lifestyle changes, as well as drug target identification? Most of these particular concepts are going to require us to really centralize that information into this Databricks commercial lakehouse concept, where we can pull in data from VCF, FASTQ, as well as HDF and scores, as well as annotations, and very importantly, utilize machine learning to figure out how we can do variant prediction, structure prediction, disease prediction, annotation, and drug discovery. Now, this is all going to be governed by our single lakehouse environment, where we can actually utilize our Unity catalog systems to make sure that we are actually going to be HIPAA compliant. We have our audit logs, we can actually set our proper governance and controls, and we can actually see data lineage associated with this. So from a Databricks perspective, getting data products specifically from those data sources is what we really want to help our customers with, and that's what we've been actively working on. And this is why our partnership with TileDB matters so much. So before we go more into that, I'm actually going to go through a demo of the Databricks platform, and I'm going to show you how we integrate with TileDB today. And we're going to show you a sample of tertiary analysis. So with that in mind, I'm going to share my screen now. Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So for folks new to Databricks, this is what the Databricks environment looks like today when you log in. You'll see that we have different modalities in terms of personas that can utilize our technology. So for example, we have our data science products with our workspaces, we have our data catalog lineage, and we have our compute systems and elastic computing platforms, as well as the marketplace to pull in different kinds of assets that may be commercially available or freely available as well. We have our SQL editor, so if you are writing tertiary analysis queries, you're able to utilize that, as well as our Genie systems, which we'll go into later, that allows us to ask questions using natural language processing of genomic data and biomarker information. We also have our data engineering orchestration systems, as well as our AI and ML technologies, including the ability to launch agents, classical machine learning models, utilize our auto ML technology, and very importantly, serve models using our serverless model serving technology. So what I'm going to go in here is I'm actually going to go into the catalog. When I go into the catalog today as a catalog explorer, I can see there's a lot of different data sets that are available, and I'm able to see the permissions associated with each of these particular data sets as here's our catalog and lineage. But very importantly, we can actually integrate with TileDB at exactly this particular point by clicking Delta Sharing. And we can actually install a share that's been generated from TileDB. So I'm going to switch my screen share to my full screen share now, so we can see that. And what you can see here is the ability to import using open Delta sharing credentials. If we go over to our downloads here, I have a particular share file that's been generated by TileDB. I drag and drop this inside of here, and then I'm going to call this TileDB workshop and import this in. When I import this in, you're going to see the ability to actually have the name of this particular share and a catalog that we can actually assign it to. And once we mount this to a catalog, we can actually now see the underlying data. So what we're going to get right now is oncology information, basically soma analysis off of very different variants from TileDB, all read within zero copy mechanism within Databricks today. So now you can actually read information off of this one. So if I go to any of these particular data sets, like one of these over here, I can see additional information. This is the wrong data set here. Just give me a second while it loads. It's going to take a few minutes to display all the data. And then from there, I can get actual information about that particular data set. Let's click here. It's taking some time to refresh. There we go. So we can get information about different dimensions associated with these particular soma analysis for the data sets themselves. Now, this is really important because we're pulling in information that TileDB has actually generated and is utilizing their information in order to feed into what we call tertiary analysis on our side. So what we can do next is we can take this exact same data set and go to what is known as our Genie systems, which is our AI BI tools, and we can create a particular Genie room off of these data sets as well. So if I go into this configuration, I can pull in a lot of information associated with different data sets that are available. For example, I've pulled in case diagnoses, demographics, and exposures from what is known as the cancer genome analysis, and I can even add TileDB data here as well. So if I go here, and I go to TileDB, I can see I can pull in any of these particular data sets I may want to pull in, so I can confirm this one for this particular edition. Now, for the purposes of this particular demo, I already had some generation off of this one. So I can ask simple questions using tertiary analysis today, our API technologies, like what are these tables and how are they actually connected? So they indicate that there's going to be case diagnoses, demographics, exposures, and it tells us that they're all patient level analyses. Now, using our AI BI technology, we can also ask questions like how does the average age at diagnosis vary across different tumor grades? And we can actually surface this level of information. This is actually doing what's called text-to-SQL code behind the scenes. So it's actually able to generate code on your behalf that can directly query this information. And since we can pull in TileDB information, we can actually directly query the TileDB information as well. So we can ask other important questions as what is the average age at diagnosis for each particular primary diagnosis itself? And you can see how we'll generate this level of data, including automatically generating charts for a lot of analyses today. Now, this is just a small snippet of what we can do with TileDB and what the Omics intelligence platform looks like. I'm going to pass it over to Seth, who's going to look into more in-depth analysis now.
Thank you for that great example, Mark, and we're very excited about what we're seeing here. So let me share my screen and let's this up here. What I want to, before I dive into the actual code, I wanted to give a couple quick details about what we're going to be showing and really how we see TileDB and Databricks fitting together in these type of analysis that we're talking about today. As Mark said, there's actually a lot of capabilities and a lot of potential for the TileDB and Databricks integrations, including beyond just the healthcare and life science we're talking about today. But our primary focus that we want to just talk about for one example here is doing the secondary and tertiary analysis components for precision medicine and for drug discovery. And really where we see TileDB is providing a lot of that end-to-end modern omics workbench capabilities. We have support for secondary analysis running Nextflow pipelines in TileDB. Our previous webinar in this series actually went over a number of examples showcasing our secondary analysis running Nextflow. So please check out that webinar. And that leads directly into the tertiary analysis, right? No matter how you're bringing the data in, whether it's via flat files themselves, whether it's converted into the TileDB's native format for high performance analysis, or whether we're talking about things that exist in Databricks like Delta tables, iceberg tables, unified table formats, we can bring that into the Carrara catalog. We can then perform high throughput retrieval and distributed querying on this, and then integrate that into machine learning pipelines, visualizations, and reporting. And we really see Carrara being able to support this end-to-end with a very critical component of this being Databricks coming in and providing the capabilities, as Mark was showing, and I'll show in just a minute, of running photon clusters, machine learning GPUs, some of the NVIDIA work that's been going on great there, and being able to combine the systems together to provide that holistic governance and holistic platform capabilities here. So what I'm going to actually focus a bit on today is running a machine learning workload in TileDB as one of our primary examples. So TileDB integrates a lot with machine learning and generative AI components. We've got native integrations with things like TensorFlow, PyTorch, NVIDIA libraries. I'm going to showcase NVIDIA Rapids in just a moment here. We've got the ability to store, share, and serve machine learning models, distribute it and serverless pipelines for machine learning, including the training parts and the connecting of different multimodal data sets here. And of course, native vector search capabilities. TileDB has got native vector search built directly in, which provides a lot of power by having vector search alongside your data itself. So you have a unified governance structure over not just the vectors, but also the data itself to understand who has access to what and make sure any type of queries they're doing will return only results based off what they have access to. And then, of course, all of this integrates up into large language models and AI tools and integrations like LangChain and others, and of course, Agentbricks to perform queries like Mark just showed in Genie. So what I'm going to show a little bit here is the combination of the two systems together. So this diagram really kind of highlights how this might work. We support a number of different ways to run this on top of AWS or Azure infrastructure. But you'll basically see, TileDB, we've got the governance, access control, catalog, the data loading and compute layers, right? We've got policies for auditing, for audit trails, for governance, and I'll go over some of that. The ETL frameworks of things like Nextflow pipelines, which we talked about. And then, of course, the integrations with notebooks, dashboards, and a variety of query APIs. Now, the nice thing about TileDB and TileDB Carrara here is that while we have a lot of these functions built in, you can also directly connect to different components from Databricks, right? On the catalog, we're going to showcase the Unity catalog from the TileDB side, like Mark just showed the Delta Share items there. For the actual data loading or the analysis, right, you can run Spark jobs, Photon jobs, and of course, things like Agentbricks and Genie to be able to do all of that. So you've got a lot of flexibility with how you're going to be accessing the data and where you're actually going to be running that compute. So with that, I'm going to switch over to actually walk through Carrara Live and showcase how we're going to use TileDB plus Databricks plus NVIDIA to do a very classic example that we see with a lot of our customers around SingleCell using NVIDIA Rapids to do submanifolds. So what I'm first going to show is just the basic overview of Carrara before we actually dive into the actual workload. What I'm showing you here is our web interface for Carrara. Now, we have a lot of programmatic APIs behind everything, Python, R, Java, C#, JavaScript. So you can use TileDB's web interface, but you can also build this into your applications. You can build upon our APIs for dashboards, for native apps, many different ways to access the data and access all the functionality that I'm going to show, including the catalog aspects. So in TileDB, we have a hierarchical relationship between users, projects, and the data. So at the very top level, we have a concept called workspaces. And right now I'm in the TileDB workspace here. And you can see that you've got a bunch of different details about a workspace, including, you can put things like the logos, the names, the descriptions, everything you expect from modern web things. You can have different users in the system. And of course, storage settings available here and other settings like, access to S3, default credentials, things like that. So here I've got a default S3 path for my entire workspace with default credentials. The goal is that, the administrators, IT admins, DevOps folks, SREs, they can configure the storage details, the Amazon accounts, things like that. But the average user doesn't have to worry about that at all because once it's configured at the top level, everyone can just inherit from that. That leads to the next concept of team spaces, right? So I have a workspace that kind of governs all of my users inside of it, but then inside of that, I can have sub team spaces. So here I've got two. I've got general, and I've got my oncology example here that we're using to kind of mimic what an oncology department in typical like biopharma would be. And inside my team space, I can see my settings where, again, I have a lot of the same details, the overview, the description, but I also have things like visibility. Team spaces can be available to anybody in your work space, or you can make it invite only and private. That way, if you have sensitive projects, not everyone can see that and access that. So you have a lot of flexibility. You can, of course, manage individual members in the team space. So here I've just got two example folks, myself and one of my colleagues, Stefan. And this means that only the two of us have access to this team space and can do things inside of it. Other users in my workspace can't do that. So you have a lot of control at a project level and a team space level of who has access to what data and where it is. You can, of course, also have settings for credentials and storage at the team space level, right? So we can inherit everything from the workspace, but we understand there's a lot of diverse use cases out there, being able to connect different systems at different levels. And depending on the project, you might have special buckets or different accounts you need to connect. So you have a lot of flexibility to inherit from the workspace, but also define things individually here. So here I've got, my S3 details, but you can also see I've actually connected Databricks to this particular team space. So only this team space has access to my Databricks account with my service principal here in the workflow to access all of that. And right off the bat, at the top level of my team space, you can see I've got a variety of different assets right here. I've got things like a markdown file. I put a README for this. If I open up the README, it's a very simple README file here, but you can actually see that you can view the markdown live in the system. You can also view details like metadata, if there's any type of metadata at it, or I can manually add metadata in the system. You also have activity logs, so you can see that I created this a few hours ago, and I just read the metadata by clicking the tab, and it's logged right here in the system. So you have full auditability across the system here. You can also see right in my top level of my team space, a Databricks table, right? So as we've been talking about, we've got two-way integration with the Unity catalog via Delta Share and Unity catalog directly. And from the Unity side, you can see the TileDB assets as Mark showed. And from the TileDB side, we can also pull in Databricks tables. So here's one example table that I have that I can open up and see basic details about. I can see a preview of some of the data pulled in. I can see things like the actual schema available here too. And this particular data set, it actually lives over in the Unity catalog. And if I switch my screens for a moment, if I'm logged into Databricks, I can see this exact same table here, the Ensemble V106. I see my my overview, my sample data. It's a Delta table that I've got registered here in the system. So it's very convenient to be able to see and access the data sets across each other's systems. So you have a unified structure that no matter where you're going to access, where you're looking, what compute you have a holistic view of everything in the system here. Now, in addition to looking at things like markdown files, looking at Databricks tables, TileDB has a lot of support in the catalog for doing previews and seeing different data types. One of my favorite examples is just doing a quick look at things like imaging, whether it's biomedical imaging, histopathology, or spatial transcriptomics. You can open up an image and see a preview live. Now, this particular image, this lives on S3 in the TileDB format. From my laptop across the Wi-Fi here, across the internet, I'm accessing this image, viewing it live, slicing and dicing things on the fly. It's one of the very powerful things about TileDB is when we bring data into the system, you have a lot of capabilities to it and a lot of high performance capabilities of doing things like live previews of multi-gigabyte images, fetching only the relevant parts of that data, bringing it in here. And of course, seeing all the details about that image, including things like metadata available in the system here. And imaging has a lot of different metadata, right? So it's pretty nice to come in and see things like, you see the assay that this was run with. You see things like the axis layers. You can also see things like what species this came from, categories, things like that. So very nice to have a lot of metadata, which you can then search on in our system using our catalog functionality. All right, with that, I'm going to actually switch over to our example around SingleCell. So with TileDB SingleCell, we've got a lot of different data that we've loaded in the system here, and you've got a lot of capabilities of doing large-scale analysis. What I'm actually going to show you here is using the CZI cell census, which will allow you to access CZI's over 100 million cells that they've put into the cell census via TileDB Soma. We're going to access a subset of this to actually use NVIDIA Rapids and a Photon cluster that I have running over in the Databricks environment to access and run a basic submanifold analysis. So what I'm going to do here is import a bunch of Python packages, very typical setup that you have. I'm going to connect to my Databricks cluster. I've got a running cluster in the system here, so I can just connect to that directly. I'm going to access the cell census that I've loaded into Carrara. CZI cell census is publicly available data sets, but one of the nice things is we can actually register that in Carrara. You can load that into the system here and then access everything with the governance, the access control, the audit logs, the reproducibility that you have in TileDB. So I've loaded that here, and I'm using the September 29th version of this data set. I'm going to access a subset of this. So I'm just going to look for tabula sapiens of all cells, Homo sapiens, so human data, and macrophages. I'm limiting the data set down just for this example so that we can run it here as we go. And actually, let me go ahead and connect to everything here. And one of the nice things too is we're going to distribute this out based off tissue type. So while I'm looking at macrophages, there's several different tissue types here. So we're going to look at blood, bone, liver, lung, small intestine, and spleen to do this in a distributed fashion. Now, we've got a couple helper functions that we're going to do to start with. The first is just accessing the subset of the cell census data. So here I'm going to just query the cell census using the cell census APIs for Soma and filter it down to the data sets that we were just talking about, looking at that. And when I get that back, we can see that I get a particular data set ID. This just identifies in the cell census whole collection which particular data sets that I want to access as the subcomponents. Next, we have just a couple helper functions to actually retrieve the TileDB Soma dataset as an AND data object. One of the really nice things about TileDB Soma and our SingleCell offering is that we integrate into the ecosystem natively. You can get things back if you're in the R world. You can get it back as Seurat objects. You can get it back as SingleCell experiments. You can also get it back as AND data in the Python ecosystem, which means that we can very easily integrate this with NVIDIA Rapids to run this here, because NVIDIA Rapids supports reading from AND data. So we can run everything together. So here, with our retrieve AND data, basically we're just going to run a query. We're filtering our obs based off the filters from above. We're going to list out only a few columns because for this analysis, we don't need the entire data set. We can subselect on our columns and then get that back as an AND data object. And if we just look at what that looks like here, we see that we've got a a subset of the AND data with a handful of observations and genes looking with a few variables. Now, this is probably our most important function here, our submanifold. How are we actually going to do the analysis, right? So it takes a couple of parameters here, and what we're going to do is return a pandas data frame. So the AND data that we want, the genes that we're interested in, the number of genes, the number of PCs, the minimum gene threshold, and whether we're going to modify our AND data object in place, like do we want to save it, do we want to do any output like that. So for the sake of time, I'm going to skip through this, not going too deep into the actual bioinformatics that we have here. But the important thing is pretty much this. The really nice thing about NVIDIA Rapids is that it's pretty much a drop-in replacement for most ScanPy functions. It supports most of the pre-processing and analyses functions. So what I can do is say, if I have NVIDIA Rapids available, we're going to use it. If not, I can fall back to ScanPy. And this actually means that this notebook can run locally on a CPU, or if you have NVIDIA Rapids and a GPU environment available, we can take advantage of that. So very powerful and flexible to run this in different environments. But what we're going to do is just basically do a lot of things. If we're on Rapids, we're going to move our AND data to the GPU. We're going to calculate QC metrics, apply filters, run normalization, run the scaling and the compute, do things like PCA, nearest neighbors, run our UMAP, and of course, clustering at the end. And most importantly, we're going to return our light-in values so we can actually do plotting here. Now, if I run this just directly in the notebook, like I said, we'll run this based off only ScanPy and my CPU. My particular notebook here does not have a GPU in it, but you can run it and get it back. And that's the nice thing about Rapids and the flexibility they have with ScanPy or not, is I can run it locally on only a single gene. But if I really want to run this at scale across all the different tissue types, this is where using Spark, Photon, and Databricks really comes into play. So I'm going to define a very nice function, which will let me run this inside of the Photon environment. It's going to use the pandas map in function, which I need to define my output schema, tell Spark what my schema is going to be. I take in an iterator of all the partitions of data that I want, and I return an iterator of the results here. What I'm basically going to be doing here is I'm going to loop over all my tissues. I'm going to access my AND data, and I'm going to call that submanifold process, which will automatically use NVIDIA Rapids since it's available in the Photon environment, and then return this. So this is my setup to actually run it in Spark. You see, I'm basically using the exact same thing that I would run and use it locally in my notebook here, but just a couple extra steps so I can actually run it in a distributed fashion across all the tissue types. Now, before I actually run that, I just want to highlight that with my connection that I have to Databricks, you can do anything you'd like. You can run the distributed environments here. If I want to fetch that table that we just were looking at before, I can fetch that back, get the top 10 records here. So you can access any tables, you can mix and match different data sets, and you get all of that back. So what I will do is now call my run Spark function, which will just take my tissue types and call my map and pandas function to distribute this out. And when I ran this from earlier, we ran this and we get all our results back here. And this actually ran directly on Spark. So if I go back to my Spark environment here in Databricks Photon, I go to my cluster, you can see I've got a Rapids cluster already running here. And we can see the jobs that have been run right here, right? So we've run a bunch of different jobs. We can see they were all run right here. So right from my Spark environment, you can see that it logged myself as my user that ran it over here. And you have all the capabilities directly from TileDB to dispatch directly in the system here. And of course, if I want to plot this, I can define a nice UMAP plot environment here where I can view this to plot it out. So the last thing that I'll do, and then we'll turn it over for some Q&A, is just say that not only can I run from a notebook into the Spark environments, but I can also use TileDB's distributed compute. TileDB supports task graphs directly in the system. This is our form of distributed compute, and you can mix and match heterogeneous items. So from TileDB task graphs, I can dispatch tasks, access different parts of the TileDB stack, potentially even run Nextflow pipelines, and then make calls into Photon environments. So here I can define one of my task graphs. I'll call it TileDB plus Databricks. I'm going to run this in a real-time mode, so it'll be fast here. And then I'm going to loop over my tissues, and we have a nice helper function that we've built out called submit Databricks. So right from our distributed environments, I can submit that to Databricks with the same function I have, in this case, issuing my tissue. And when we look at this, we see that I've got my 6 different tissue types run here: liver, bone, marrow, blood, all run, and the results come back here again. So you have a lot of flexibility with our integration to access each other's catalogs, to access data from each other's systems, Databricks or TileDB, and then to run different compute environments. From notebooks, you can access each other's distributed compute environments. From both distributed compute environments, you can cross each other's systems. So with a fully automated and fully audit log system where you can see each other's queries that are being run, you can see access from each the different systems. So very powerful integration we have to unlock the capabilities of doing things like running NVIDIA Rapids on top of Photon directly from TileDB. Okay, with that, I'm going to just finish off with 2 slides, and we'll turn it over for Q&A. So what we really see here, as I was just saying, with the power of TileDB and Databricks together, is that we can unlock unprecedented performance across the multimodal and tabular data sets. You can achieve a fair compliant stack with all of your data to be powered by AI. This really works for preclinical and target discovery, right? Being able to have that fair platform with all multimodal aspects. We see a lot of use cases around trusted research environments, being able to bring all of this power together. And of course, genomic precision medicine, as we were talking earlier, including things like rapid whole genome sequencing and analysis for rare disease. And I can't finish this off without talking a little bit about how the benefits directly to you, right, are that we can have data and science teams working faster together. You no longer have to have siloed teams between different business units, machine learning units, using different tools. Instead, with TileDB and Databricks together, they can all come together, which directly leads to lower operational cost and reduced engineering time. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Devika for a Q&A session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you. This was a really good webinar. We had a few questions in the chat, and Mark, I see that you've answered a lot of them. Maybe worth bringing up couple just for everyone. So one of the questions was, where does the compute run? And yes, I mean, I'm assuming that this is essentially like in TileDB plus Databricks situation, where is the compute running? It can run within the Databricks environment. Anything else you guys would like to add there?
Yeah, so it can run within TileDB's own execution platform, but part of the major value add of utilizing Databricks plus TileDB is that a lot of these particular pipelines may leverage Spark behind the scenes, and Databricks has the leading, fastest Spark engine in the world, with the lowest TCO, which means it's also the cheapest and most performant Spark engine. So we're actually leveraging the power of Databricks' compute engine with the ease of use of TileDB's platform. So this means you can push down much more complex queries down onto the TileDB from TileDB onto Databricks. We can do that from both tertiary analysis using SQL warehousing technology. And what we showcased today is actually doing something much closer to secondary analysis, since we're actually developing now annotations off of the raw information itself.
Right. Another question around use cases, really, like, so what kind of use cases are you guys seeing at like joint customers getting unlocked today, and what might be what do you hope to unlock in the future? Seth, if you want to take that.
Yeah, of course. So, we see a lot of potential, as we talked about at the start of this webinar, right? We're really focused right now on the healthcare and life science and precision medicine and drug discovery, but we see a lot of potential of the integration here with, especially with the agent bricks and Genie powering, the AI items to expand beyond those initial use cases and beyond some of the initial modalities that we were talking about here, whether it's single cell imaging or genomics data, and really build holistic AI pipelines end to end that will span across different modalities, bringing in additional data types, not just in healthcare and life science, but even beyond that, right? Geospatial use cases, defense, time series, many other use cases. But we're really looking forward to continuing driving the partnership here with Databricks and leveraging, as Mark said, right, the photon environment to power a lot of the different analytics. And really mixing and matching that compute that we have with TileDB's task graphs, being able to access large-scale data and large-scale frontier data sets in the Omnimodal space, but empowering using like Genie and agent bricks to drive a lot of different agent functionality that we have here. And I think that's really going to expand us beyond these initial very high-value targets that we see and move beyond. I can't say enough that we've chosen these initial precision medicine and drug discovery use cases because the impact that we have is so large, right? Being able to accelerate diagnostics, being able to accelerate drug discovery has such a real world value impact by being able to bring diagnoses and potentially saving lives, right? So we're very excited to focus on these to get started, but this is certainly not where we're stopping.
Great. There's another question on the Databricks demo. Did the Databricks demo show querying of the TileDB share? I saw the share added to the Genie workspace, but the only queries I saw queries the Databricks table. A bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say what happened is when we add data sets over into the Genie space, our systems will figure out appropriately which particular data set to actually query. And that's all I can say off of that when I need to double check internally. But the entire point is you can add multiple different data sets within a Genie space today, and it's not always the case that all of the data sets are going to be utilized. This is how we actually scale out the AI BI technology for a lot of clients today, and allows us to build different data rooms for different forms of analysis on top of biomarker genomic information.
Right. We don't have any more questions, but what I want to do is I do want to share this this last slide again because it does have a QR code. We would love to hear from you. If you'd like to book a meeting with us together, we can sit down and explore use cases that you're trying to address and how together TileDB plus Databricks can help solve some of them. So yeah, please feel free to take a second to scan this QR code. We will reach out. We're working right now with a couple of joint customers, and we're exploring multiple things, and so we'd love to help others around here. With that, I think we're good. Thank you again, Seth and Mark. Really want to thank you both for walking us through those live demos. Never easy, and we're going to share a recording of this for everyone, and we'll see you all again next month. Thank you.
Thank you.